Okay, I hope you can see my screen at this point. And
yeah, we can see it. You can enlarge the screen though. Yeah.
Okay, let me see. I'm trying to do a there. How's that?
Yes, that's better.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Good afternoon. It's good morning here in Washington, D.C. It's a pleasure to be part of this this workshop and this panel today, and I look forward to the discussion. And more importantly, I look forward to the continued progress in terms of the Grand Challenge Fund and the Local Challenge Fund offered through HEC. My name's Graham Harris, and I'm part of the World Bank team that works on the HEDP project based here in Washington, D.C. A couple things about where I want to go today. So key messages in terms of putting together good proposals, and then I'll talk a little bit about the full proposal template, both for LCF and GCF in terms of the overall scale of ideas and the things that the HEC is looking for in terms, and then more broadly, what's expected in a good proposal that's coming in at this point in the process. So I know very well that as Omar said, that HEC has already had one round of the Grand Challenge Fund and one round of the Local Challenge Fund. And we're now in the second round, looking to build upon those successes, get strong proposals, and really most importantly, get strong research going through Pakistan that can have a big impact on the country and the global research landscape. So a few messages on what brings a strong proposal. HEC's goal is supporting the best project proposals and researchers in Pakistan. And in this particular case, we're talking about the Grand Challenge Fund and the Local Challenge Fund. These are large awards, there's no doubt about that. And with those large awards, there's supposed to be an expectation of a strong impact and contribution both to research development, but also strengthening the research ecosystem throughout Pakistan, contributing more to global the research environment as well, and also building up the capacity of the next generation of researchers as well. So in terms of the competitions, there is always an outline stage or an idea that comes through from LCF and GCF, and then in the full proposal stage, the expectation is that allows the principal investigator, the PI, and the whole research team to fully describe their proposed activities. And the important thing here is first is what is the focus of the research? What is the grand challenge or the local challenge, depending upon the core proposals that will be addressed? Does the research team understand the overall questions? And do they understand what they propose to do will be able to address those questions in the time period that's being funded and within the budget that's being provided through HEC. So these are highly competitive projects. You can look at the success rates from last year. Is the proposed project worthy of support as a GCF or an LCF award in the competition, not just in terms of the ideas, what it will address, but also how it's competitive against the other proposals that are being submitted. One of the key areas here is the proposed research novel? It should not just be incremental research that adds some small element to an existing research activity that's been going on for decades within your research group. Is it something that is really truly novel? Does it take a new approach, a new idea? Does it have some new initiative that will really make a contribution to the grand challenge or the local challenge that needs to be addressed? Another key element is what about the composition of the research team? Again, these are large awards. It should not just be done by one PI and a couple of graduate students. There should be a team of researchers that come together to really address this challenge and to deliver on the proposed project. So has the research team been put together based upon their capacities, their abilities, the resources they may bring to make a contribution to the project as a whole? And ultimately, what will be the impact of the proposed GCF or LCF project on the research enterprise as a whole? Clearly, that means at some level the academic enterprise. These projects are being done in a university environment. faculty members, students, and the broader university community. But the other thing is they should have an impact beyond the research lab. They should have an impact on the grand challenge itself, and there's several grand challenges concepts listed in the call for proposals, or it should have a significant impact on the local challenge that's been identified by the PI in conjunction with the local stakeholders for this particular research as well. So it should be both at the academic level and the grand challenge or the local challenge explicitly. But more broadly, this should also be for society as a whole and for Pakistan in particular. So what's the impact? What is the research impact? What's the proposed social and economic impact of the research that will be done for Pakistan more broadly? And that can be both in the immediate term, there should be some outputs there, but also in the long-term economic development as well, socioeconomic development. Some other key messages that come really from any sort of proposal as well. The full proposal must address all the sections of the proposal template. And the reason for that is twofold. One is that enables you to fully describe what you're proposing to do in your research and what the impact of that research will be, and can your team actually accomplish the research that's being proposed. The other thing is the proposal is very strongly linked to the evaluation rubric. And that will be done by the reviewers of the proposal to look at what you're proposing and evaluate that versus not just see what you're proposing, but also against the competition from the other proposals that are being submitted. So really, if you want to be competitive, it really is important to make sure you're addressing all the elements of the proposal template. The proposal should describe a plan of activities that are appropriate for the project duration and the requested budget. So yes, everyone would like to solve an entire grand challenge. That is not possible within a 3-year time frame and the budget that's available through HEC for the Grand Challenge Fund. So make sure that what's being done is identifying a real core element of a research question you want to address that can be addressed by the team and can be addressed in the project duration and the requested budget that's allowed by HEC. So in that way, the scope of the activities that you're proposing for research must be balanced by the project constraints. And explaining that clearly is going to be critical both for you as a success of a project ultimately, if you're selected for funding, but also again for the expectation of the reviewer to make sure that what you're proposing is reasonable within a time frame and a budget that's allowed under this particular core proposals. So I really should point out that global grand challenge, climate change cannot be solved under a single project for $1.5 million in Pakistan. It may require other contributions as well. Now, local challenges, depending upon the scope of the local challenge, you can probably make far more progress on a local challenge perhaps than you can on a grand global challenge within the time frame and budget of a project here. What I would point out is that teams are essential. These are large awards in terms of the scope of the projects. They're large awards, frankly, on a global scale in terms of researchers as well. So the idea would be that teams come together, the principal investigator understands who contributes what elements of the research to the overall project objectives and brings the right people, whether they be from Pakistan, whether they be from universities, civil society, outside universities, both in Pakistan and abroad, to address a project goal. So teams, I think, are essential in this project and need to be constructed carefully, not based upon personal interest, but really based upon the research agenda that you're proposing for the project. So I think that comes down into the second line here, where integrating 3 or 4 research teams into a broader research plan that addresses the challenge is really important. But these should not be completely separate projects. It should be integrated as a core. And what you really should be doing is having 3 or 4 research teams that work together, that build upon each other to better address the grand challenge or the local challenge in the time frame that's available and the budget that's available under the call for proposals. And then the last item here is something I'd recommend for any proposal, of course, is as you're writing the proposal, it's not just about the research idea that you have. It's also about how you write the research proposal in response to the call for proposals and what's required by HEC in this case for the research project. Making sure that your idea, your plan, your budget, your expectations align with what the call for proposals is doing. And that means just the call for proposals and the evaluation rubric is an essential element here. So how do the proposal elements that you're writing, the different sections of the proposal, map onto the evaluation elements for a reviewer to look at as they're concluding the project, as they're evaluating your proposal itself? So some other messages more broadly in terms of proposal development. It's great that you're all here on this webinar as you're launching this process. Please start putting the proposal together as soon as possible and iterate back and forth on the proposal and the different sections, especially as this is a multi-investigator proposal in both GCF and LCF. So really look at what ideas you want to pursue. What is your anticipated work plan? Again, these are 3 or 4 different research themes coming together. The work plan may depend upon work plan 2, work stream 2, for example, may depend on results from work stream 1. So make sure your work plan is consistent in terms of timing, the expectations, what the deliverables are, not just at the end of the project, but also in the interim of the project, that then enable further progress to be made in other teams on the proposal itself. Look at who the consortia of researchers are and stakeholders are who are going to contribute to this project. What's the core team? It's obviously the PI. What else is essential? Is it equipment, and someone has equipment that's available? Is it someone who's in a particular location because you need field work in a particular location? For the local challenge fund, who are the partners that you're bringing in who help identify the project, identify the research question, but also are able to consider the implementation of the solutions that are found for the local challenge itself. Again, anywhere in the world, these are large projects. They'll be led by the principal investigator. They'll be implemented by the consortia of researchers involved with that. But you need institutional support to make sure this project succeeds. So talk to your deans, talk to your vice chancellors, make sure they're on board with the ideas. The things that you would expect from the institution are going to be made available to you as a researcher and as a research team. What are the resources you need to conduct the project? Resources often we think about as financial, of course. That's important. The budget's important. The budget that comes from HEC is important, but also what is available from your university, what field sites may you need access to, what data sets that may not be on campus you need access to complete your research idea. And the more you iterate and the more ideas you go back and forth on in the proposal preparation, the stronger your proposal will be, because people will be able to look at it both within the team and say, okay, this timeline is not reasonable, but also bringing outside views to look at the ideas to make sure that they see the project as competitive within the call. Every researcher knows their research is relevant. The goal of a proposal is to make sure you can make a compelling case for a strong proposal that should be funded by someone who may not be directly in your particular field. So again, more the key elements. To best communicate a compelling case for support to HEC, but also to the evaluators who will be looking at your proposal as a whole. So really what's important here, having a great idea. Research is only going to be funded if there's a great idea that you're going to be investigating. Do you have the expertise by the PI and also within a research team to appropriately address this great idea that you have? Do you have a reasonable strategy for the project lifetime and the budget? These are 2 or 3 year projects with a big but not unlimited budget. Are you aware of the costs? How many students can you hire? How many postdocs can you hire? What research equipment, supplies do you need to implement the project? How many faculty members you need to buy out of their teaching requirements? Is it an integrated project? Again, these are not 4 separate themes that come together under a broad topic. These are integrated research questions that need to be considered in a combined fashion. What are the milestones and deliverables on what will be achieved? It's not just what comes at the very end. What's also very important to make sure there's consistent, regular progress is the intermediate steps as well. And do you have appropriate timelines in your proposal to do that? In terms of resources, again, equipment is obvious. And there is some ability to buy equipment within these grants, but the focus of the GCF and LCF is not equipment. It's more the research that's being addressed. So I think that's an important element to note. What resources are required in terms of the team? Expertise, location, a mix of graduate students and faculty members and other team members, and making sure that students are involved in the research, because research is about both the research outcomes, but also training the next generation of researchers. And again, I said this before, but getting feedback and iterating before submitting is a key idea that I would always emphasize here. So what I'd like to do now a little bit is turn around and talk about the templates as a whole, and just address some of the questions within those as well. So the full proposal template, which is reasonably consistent for both. Okay, my screen is frozen. Hold on a sec. Okay. So the full proposal template, again, this is relatively consistent within HEC and within the LCF and GCF. The details I would encourage you to read for each section and really follow the instructions as well. So again, following the formatting instructions is important. I'm getting a lot of feedback on mine. Make sure you complete, as I said earlier, each proposal section. There is a word or a page limit for each section. Please make sure that you limit yourself to that. You don't have to use a full page allocation for each section, but it really, I think, enables you. And the page limits were designed to make sure that you have the appropriate size for the for each, with the ability to address each section in particular. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Is anybody else having the same issue?
I think somebody needs to unmute. Sorry, mute themselves. That's why you're getting the noise. Somebody needs to mute.
Thank you. So in terms of the, complete each proposal section, you don't have to use a full page allocation for each section, but I will note that allocation for each section was designed so that it should be a reasonable amount of space to present your ideas for that. And the idea here is also that these allocations are for each section. So you can't save half a page from one section and then use it for a subsequent section. So for example, the project description, you may have 5 pages. You can't use 6 pages for that and then take away a page from the project management section. Make sure you address the guidance questions under each. I'm still having a lot of feedback here. HEC, can you mute everybody else? Is that possible? Because
there's at least about 8 people who are not muted. I can see from the participants. So we do need to mute all of them.
Yeah, can HEC mute everybody who's not speaking?
Yeah, we're just doing that.
Thank you. Okay, so the next line is address the guidance questions under each proposal element. So in each of the proposal sections, HEC has provided some guidance in terms of what should be addressed in this section. And that's twofold. One is because it follows the basic idea of what those sections represent, but also it aligns with the evaluation rubric that's been established as well. So really, it's in the best interest of the researcher, both for the proposal stage, but also potentially for a research grant, to make sure that those guidance questions are addressed. Do consider how each proposal element contributes to the overall message that you're trying to complete. Obviously, these are separate sections, and there's a lot of separate sections to do, but there's also an overall mission of what the proposal should communicate in terms of why this question is important to study and to fund by HEC, and why this team is best positioned to address the research question that's being proposed. Please be consistent between proposal sections. If you say one thing will be done in year 2, make sure that throughout your proposal, that's being done in year 2, because that notes a consistency of ideas. It notes a consistent framework for the research agenda, and it notes at the early point an attention to detail that demonstrates that the team will be able to work together as a unified research project. Ensure that your budget template matches the proposed work plan. So this is actually really important. You do have a substantial proposal budget template within the full proposal. Make sure that in what you're proposing and the people you're proposing to do it and the resources that are required and the equipment and the supplies that are required is consistent throughout the entire project. Because ultimately you're going to be implementing, if it's selected, you're going to be implementing a project with a budget that's been proposed in the initial proposal. And again, I emphasized it before, I'll emphasize it now, and I'll emphasize it again. Start writing early and get feedback on the proposal as you can. Ultimately, it's the evaluators who are going to determine how far forward your proposal goes in this competition. As you write the proposal, consider how the evaluators will read the proposal. Make sure that you don't use acronyms and shortcuts that you may use as an expert, but someone else in the field may not know everything that is talked about. So make sure that your proposal is written not just for you, but also for the evaluators who are considering this proposal against many, many others in similar disciplines, but also in different disciplines. So again, general considerations for the proposal. What has been done in the past? Do you as a PI and as the research team understand the context in which your work will fit in with the existing literature, the existing expertise, and the existing knowledge that has been done previously? What are the gaps in our understanding of whatever challenge you're choosing to pursue? Can you identify the research questions that come out from that? So what is the problem to be addressed in this GCF or LCF project relative to what's been done in the past and the goals of addressing whatever challenge you happen to be talking about? Again, why is this important? You as a researcher know why your project is important. That's very important. That's essential. But you need to be able to communicate that to a broader audience, both in terms of the evaluators and in terms of HEC. What's the potential impact in the research academia environment? But more broadly, in alignment with HEDP, the GCF and the LCF calls, what's the potential impact on society and especially on Pakistan as a whole? What is proposed in your project work plan? What are you trying to communicate? You can't go into every single detail within the page limits that are prescribed. So you have to be able to define in enough detail the questions that will be addressed and how they'll be addressed. Who will do the work? It's one thing to put together a team. The team should be strong, but make sure each person who's on that team is selected for a particular purpose to advance the research agenda that you may have. How will this proposed project make a contribution to addressing the grand challenge or the local challenge that is there? And ultimately, given the size of these projects, the scope and the number people involved? Are the proposal elements integrated to make a cohesive project, and making sure it's not just 4 people who in different disciplines happen to be working on, for example, water issues or climate change? How is it integrated to make a solid contribution to the overall challenge, not just a limited academic discipline? I'll talk a little bit about some of the sections of the full proposal and why they're important. So these are some of the different areas that are in the full proposal. The highlighted ones are the ones I will talk about specifically in the next few minutes. So in terms of the executive summary, it's a 1-page, the abstract of the project. What is the challenge that is being addressed? Why is this project worthy of support? What will be done? Why are the anticipated results important? So what are the results and why they're important? And who is the team? This is going to be short. You're going to have the opportunity to expand upon that in the subsequent sections of the proposal. But this is really what we would call your elevator pitch. If you had a chance to talk to someone for 3 minutes about what you're going to do, who's going to do it, and why it's important, this is where the executive summary comes in. What is the thematic area in which this is being conducted? Within the Grand Challenge Fund call proposals, the specific information on the different priority thematic areas that need to be, that can be considered. Where do you fit in within that? What's the scope of the proposed project? Again, you're not going to solve climate change in 3 years in $1.5 million US. What are you contributing to addressing climate change, or addressing water issues, or addressing pollution in a local city, for example? Why does the proposed research matter now? Really, why should this proposal be funded above the many, many other proposals that are being submitted to HEC in this core for proposals? So why does this matter now for the thematic area, for Pakistan, and for socioeconomic development? And being specific here, identifying what the outcomes are, is going to be important here. What you're communicating really matters. Again, the partners are essential in these projects, and getting the right partners really matter for the success of the project and for the scope of the projects as well. So I look here and I talk about both academic collaborators and local or sectoral collaborators. And these both come into, I think, both projects, whether it be a GCF proposal or an LCF proposal. Teams are essential. National and international collaborators are encouraged. But what do they bring to the project is the real question. Is it research expertise in a particular area? Do they have equipment, a piece of equipment, or facilities they have access to because of where they are based and located? Do they have additional resources, whatever they may be? Sometimes they're financial, sometimes they're materials that they may be producing that will be useful for the project as a whole. How do they add value to the implementation of results? Academic collaborators are always busy. One of the important things here is that the collaborators should not be just identified as a list, but they should be adding value to the project, have a specific task or tasks within the project over the lifetime of the project or some period of the lifetime, but they also should be committed to the project as a whole. Are they going to be able to contribute the work that they are promising in the proposal? And make sure you identify the confirmed collaborators. Building the right team, I think, is an essential element of both LCF and GCF. We talk about local and sectoral collaborators. Obviously, in particular, that comes in the Local Challenge Fund, where these collaborators may end up helping define what the local challenge is and what the important thing to contribute is as well. But at the same time, the Grand Challenge Fund can definitely both benefit from local or sectoral collaborators as well, depending upon the project definition that you are, the proposal definition, the research definition that you're going to be addressing. So HEC anticipates that GCF and LCF funding will strengthen partnerships between the academic world and sectoral stakeholders, and that can be public authorities, That can be local government, for example. It can be civil society, private enterprise, and policy makers. How are this project going to make an impact? How do these other stakeholders and collaborators contribute to the design, the activities of, and even in some cases, the implementation of the solutions that are found through the project themselves? A key element where they can play a role is in the dissemination and implementation of results. Dissemination in academic journals matters. As you're participating in these calls for proposals, ultimately you're looking to publish your results in both national and international journals, but also, especially in terms of the scope of these projects, the implementation on the ground of the results obtained do rely upon your local and sectoral collaborators. And again, make sure they demonstrate their commitment to the project. Everybody's busy, and identify all the confirmed collaborators. The project description really is what I would call the core of the proposal. It's the problem statement, what has been done, what will be done, and making sure the scope is reasonable within the time frame and the budget that's available under GCF or under LCF. Talk about the methodology that's going to be done. What are the work plans, the different work streams that are part of this particular project? What are the milestones and deliverables? Again, emphasizing not just the deliverables at the end of the project, but how can you ensure that the project is making timely progress towards achieving the final objectives at the end of the project? Again, how does the team contribute to the project? Dissemination of results and data, how are you going to do that more broadly? These are big challenge questions. How do you make your data available to as many people as possible that then can use it to advance the field even further? So do look at dissemination, including the impact beyond academic publishing, and look at the socioeconomic impact and the policy impact of the research results that are coming here. What are the ethical considerations of the research that you are proposing? That depends obviously on a discipline, it depends upon the type of project. But for example, if you're looking at human subjects or you're looking at something like that, then animal subjects and the ethical considerations have to be addressed and laid out upfront in the proposal. In terms of project management, again, these are grants. So it's not enough just to be a great researcher, it's can you manage a team that's going to do the entire project as well. So the PI must be an effective leader and manager, and it requires management of a potentially distributed consortia beyond a single institution. So this does require significant coordination. How are you going to do that as part of the research project as a whole? So what's the project leadership and the project management? I think those can be separate things. Structure. How will the different project elements be integrated in the research, in dissemination, and in enhancing the impact? So it shouldn't just be a single paper that's published, for example, in climate science, in an environmental science journal. It's more broadly, how does the research get communicated beyond that? Additional documents are pretty standard in terms of the proposals. References are essential. It demonstrates the team's knowledge of the field and how the proposed GCF or LCF project contributes. And there's obviously standard formats in which to deliver the references. Institutional support is important for the success of large projects at universities. Please include a letter from the Vice Chancellor, how that looks at the institutional commitments, how your project aligns with the goals and vision of the university as a whole, and their support for the project. Again, you have research teams, so CVs can be included from up to 5 collaborators. What's the qualification of the collaborators? You can look at publications, but also related activities. For example, if someone's working in a community or has experience or has put together a data set in a particular area, that's also something that can be looked at as a related activity. It really presents the opportunity to highlight the ability of the team to deliver on the project work plan. So this is really where you said that someone's an expert, the CV helps demonstrate that to the evaluator. and an ethical certificate signed by the Ethical Research Committee as appropriate of the lead institution. The last thing I really want to emphasize is the letters of commitment. There's an opportunity here to include letters both from academic partners and also sectoral or local partners as well. Often, I've been on the side of an evaluator, it's the PI who writes the letter and then just the partner signs it. And that demonstrates lack of commitment to the project. So I really encourage you to make sure that your partners write their own letters of commitment, demonstrating their commitment to the project, what they bring, how it advances their interests, as well as the GCF or LCF proposal as whole. What are their anticipated contributions? What resources and expertise they bring? If they have some financial backing, that's always good, of course. It adds money to the success of the project, but more importantly, what their intellectual commitment is to the project as a whole. If there's evidence of prior collaborations, if you've worked together in the past, then that strengthens the likelihood of success of the collaboration in the future as well. So again, I think these letters of commitment are incredibly important. They can add something beyond what's included in the other elements of the project as well. And it really demonstrates, given the team necessary to succeed in these projects, how the team has been put together strategically to address the challenge that you're looking at. And I will say, as a former reviewer and a current reviewer for different competitions around the world, and also as someone who's run evaluation panels, evaluators typically pay particular attention to letters of commitment, especially in these larger integrated type projects. So I think that's where I want to stop now. I know we have some other speakers, and then I'm happy to answer questions at the end. So thank you.
Thank you, Graham, for a fantastic presentation. Just let me switch on the, okay. So we are hosting this session for both local challenge and grand challenge fund participants. So it's also important to sort of differentiate between a grand challenge fund and local challenge fund, while Graham has highlighted some of those differences. The grand challenge fund essentially is there to support large multi-sectoral, multi-dimensional research projects where the funding size and the duration is greater than the projects that we are funding under LCF. All these details are available on HSC website for aspiring researchers who are wishing to apply for these grants. You must visit our website for further details. We have further broken down LCF into two elements, element 1 and element 2, while GCF proposals are required to be submitted by lead PIs who must be from the HEC list of research intensive institutions. In LCF element 1, we have made the provision for PIs to come from the non-listed HEC list, while in element 2, we have reversed that situation where the lead PI is coming from the listed list of HEC of research intensive universities, whereas the co-PI comes from the non-research intensive universities, as opposed to what's happening in LCF1, where the lead PI is coming from the non-listed versus the co-PI coming from the research intensive. So these are some differences that we perhaps would like to make sure that everyone understands as you finalize your LCF proposals. Next panel speakers, Dr. Jawad Dar and Professor Ihtishamur Rahman will be talking about some grand challenge themes across various priority thematic sectors that we have defined for HSC, for GCF. And for LCF, the focus remains on SDG, on the local challenge that each university and PI must choose local SDG that may be relevant to their community that they're looking to solve. With that, I would like to invite our next panel speaker, Dr. Jawad and Professor Ihtishamur Rahman. Please unmute yourself and please share your screen.
Assalamu alaikum. So maybe I'll go first if that's all right, Ihtisham. And
Yeah, that's perfectly, Joe. I'm not haven't made any slides. I'll be just
yeah. Of course. So look, Omar, if you would indulge me a little bit, look, I just sort of introduce myself. So I'm Professor Jawad Dar. I've been involved in some very large projects in the UK. I'm a professor of materials chemistry at UCL, one of the world's top 10 universities. I really enjoyed Graham's talk just now because it really encompassed really very well a lot of my experience in these sort of big grand challenge type grants. And I know for Pakistan, this is quite a new thing, relatively speaking. And I know there's been a lot of challenges in Pakistan, particularly with the HEC. And obviously, the whole process that's happening here is very much a new process for Pakistan. We all know that. And I have recently started to connect with HEC in a more engaged level. And really, when I spoke to Omar in the last few days, he asked me to come and talk and maybe share some thoughts. Look, you can all see the various theme topics that are already been put up by HEC. So I really don't feel I should really go through those topics individually or even break them down for you. But I wanted to give you some thoughts. And I made a couple of slides while the previous speaker was speaking because I had some more things to add to that. So Omar, if you don't mind, I would like to talk about just to focus on some of that. And I'm happy to expand a bit more. I wanted to also talk about international collaboration. So I am, even though I'm a full-time professor of materials chemistry at UCL, I've had, in my 20 years or career, I've had about £20 million in funding. So that's, I don't know what that is in dollars, but it's probably the size of this whole thing. But look, the key thing to say here is I also am the chairman of a group of a diaspora network of academia in the UK. And we are very much linked to Pakistan. Last year, we came with 75 academics and we ran these sort of grant development workshops. And we ran that with Pakistani academics. And I've been a visiting professor for more than about 14 years in ComSats. And in fact, my colleague Ihtisham built and designed and has been the lead of the IRC in biomedical materials, which is a fantastic research center in Lahore, in Ravin Road, which is developing biomedical materials and wound healing products and all kinds of technology. And is a great example of international collaboration, why you should have international collaboration. And I think, if anything, Ihtisham, you should maybe just talk about the benefits of international collaboration and what it can do. And what I have said to Omar Saab is that I was doing a great job given the resources he has to run this scheme. So I really congratulate him. What I've said is that I will give a seminar, I think it's on the 15th of September, to talk about what's a good GCRF project or sort of this type of project. What have I seen as being the winning sort of projects all have certain things in common, and I'll talk about that. And then Omar will announce perhaps later that in September also I will offer to have some international experts to look at some of your sort of outline ideas and see if we can help you with some collaboration. I'm going to show my slides. I've got literally 4 or 5 slides, Omar. If somebody could make me a co-host, I will literally talk you through them. It's a mixture of tips I've noticed from the last talk, a summary of things I'm going to say later in this month, and a web link for you to join internationally with people who might be interested. So am I now the host? Yeah.
Yeah, you are the host.
Thank you. Is that okay, Omar? Are we good with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have open sort of discussion around the thematic areas and the topics that you feel are very, very important for putting a good proposal, a winning proposal for GCF and NCF.
Of course. So look, can you all see this slide? Is it full size?
Yeah. You need to, it's not full size, you need to go into presentation mode. So
I just noted down some thoughts from the last speaker. And I think that some tips I noticed, and I think we covered a really good lot of things, but what I've seen is, in particular, I just add from what the last speaker said. The first thing is, I always think that if you can articulate a problem talking about numbers is a good thing, right? The size of the problem, how many people does it affect? What's the scale of the challenge, you know? And I think do your homework and really find out about the scale of the problem. Because I think when you're addressing the scale of the problem, you also address what your work, how that impact will address that scale of the, will it make a dent in that problem or not, especially if it's a grand challenge. How the university can support in ways that were answered there, but actually in the UK, and I don't know how it works in Pakistan, but sometimes they may be able to support through not only their resources and giving you IT support or whatever, but what about studentships and things like that? Is there any way, or masters projects? Somebody needs to mute there. Sorry. Okay, I'll carry on. Okay, so look, how can the university support? And in particularly, I've done a lot of, I've worked with industry extensively in the UK, okay? And in particular, they really need to outline the type of support and show why they are interested in this, right? So often people will get their friends or companies they know to support it. But, is this direct funding or this is in-kind funding? And you need to associate a value with that. So sometimes even if it's in-kind funding, so they're attending meetings or something like that, or offering something for you, they should associate a realistic value with that. One of the things I've noticed on big projects is people get the money and then they do what the hell they want. That's what academics do. So how do you stop? You've got to sell that you're not going to work in silos. So how are you going to stop working in silos? That means you get the money and then everybody just goes off and does their own thing and they don't really work together. And this happens a lot, okay? And it's one of the biggest problems in these large multidisciplinary projects. And the other thing that's a real problem, and particularly in Pakistan, about supporting the next generation, and inclusiveness. So this is to do with gender equity and supporting junior researchers. And, this is something where in Pakistan, from my extensive experience, is something that I would urge all of you to have a clear idea how you are going to support. So one of the ways is to support them through training, through teaching them how to write grants, and this kinds of activity, or supporting them with responsibility. Give them some responsibility to lead work packages and things like that. And make a point of saying, I'm giving this junior academic or new academic some responsibility. Obviously, it shouldn't be too much that they can't handle, but you should be trying to include that in your bid. What about steering? Who are your international or national steering? Who's giving you that advice? Some external body of experts, of academics. And again, Upsign, the charity that we run, we have a way of linking you to them, which I'll talk about in the slide in a minute. But that external steering and a regular interaction with that steering group is partly something that you've got to look at. So you need to get some willing volunteers who are willing to listen to what you're doing, you're obviously in confidence, and give you feedback. And you should try, where possible, to say, obviously you don't have to act on it, but of course you should listen and you should take on board what you think is relevant and obviously engage with them. And I think that community building is really important within Pakistan. I know the Pakistani mentality to a degree, and that often, resources are very precious. People tend to hold on to them. But, what can you do for the community in the other universities that probably don't have the resource you have? So I think having, invitations to invite others in to learn and train, maybe you can offer something that can help the community. And that helps you to increase your impact on the project. And actually, a lot of this comes down to impact. Another thing that, again, I think is quite new to people in Pakistan is the IP register and the risk register. So I'm saying it's new to people, but on large projects like this, you must be keeping a really good risk register, analyzing what the risks are in the project, whether they're major risks or minor risks. In other words, what the likelihood is that that's going to affect the project. And you also need to look at IP because you've got multiple universities working together. You might have international collaborators, and where did the ideas originate? Where, who did the research and who was the inventor? You must keep a regular agenda item of logging any intellectual property that's potentially going to be filed as a patent or otherwise. Okay, very, very important. And so I think one of the questions I had and maybe this can be addressed later, is can the overseas collaborators get some of that funding? Because again, even though I'd be very happy for you to join the network, and I'll show you in a minute, often the overseas collaborators, many of them are working in Pakistan that I could introduce you to from all many universities in the UK. But some of them, perhaps if they have a sort of vested interest as a collaborator, you know, with a bit of funding coming to help them to maybe travel or do other things. I'm sure there is some funding there, but I just wanted to ask that question. The other thing I'll say to you, I just found this slide as I was searching around. And I think that what we have to avoid is, and there's a good friend of mine, Professor Nicola Lowe, who spoke at the workshops that we ran last year before COVID hit. And she spoke about, if you were eating a piece of fruit, that's kind of what interdisciplinary looks like. If you're making a chopped up fruit salad, that's kind of more maybe what cross-disciplinary looks like. If you made a smoothie out of that fruit, that's what the sort of intertransdisciplinary looks like in terms of the subjects. You're synthesizing by bringing subjects together or disciplines together. You synthesize completely new sort of mixed disciplines, essentially, something that tastes and behaves completely differently to the individual disciplines, or even cross-disciplinary, where you still have your own disciplines that are working closely together. So I think try to be on the right-hand side of this where you can. So really try to develop new things that maybe are helping you to address that problem that work, you know, that basically blend those boundaries. So again, if you can think like that, I think you'll come up with something completely new rather than just rehashing the old, you know, the old ideas. So this is kind of my sort of general advice. And I'm going to sort of finish in the next couple of minutes. So look, the last things I want to say is think about the structure of your team, what their roles are, and how you're going to make sure that knowledge is passed above and below, you know, from the junior people to the top people and vice versa, and sideways. Think about how often you meet, think about inclusiveness, think about training. So there's lots of, it's not just technical training, it's training about good research culture, how to do all the things that research should be doing, and thinking about, you know, discrimination and those kinds of things as well. If you want to work in an international context, you really have to think about gender. It's so important now internationally. And, you know, obviously internationally, we have other things that we are now being inclusive about. So people based on sexual orientation or minorities and things like that, which are more what is going on in the West now, not just gender equality. So think about the advisory board. One of the ideas is you've got a grand challenge. Maybe you can address, when you do your Gantt chart showing your timeline, think about if you can break it up into sort of smaller sprints or mini challenges. And those, then when you put those together, they are working towards the grand challenges effectively. So again, that's a really good way to get different teams or different individuals or institutions to come together to work for a very focused amount of time, maybe 6 months, maybe 3 months, to really focus to try and solve one of these mini sprint challenges, which is part of the bigger challenge, okay? So we call them sprints and marathons. The sprints is the short term, sort of, you know, trying to really hammer something for 6 months, up to 6 months. The marathons are more our longer term objectives, you know, they could be our sort of where we're headed towards. So I think I've covered networking and outreach as well. So look, the organization I represent, the charity, we're all volunteers. If you go to our website, you can find out more, but most importantly for you is that if there is a way that we can transmit some of your outline ideas for proposals, I would love to share those. And I mean, obviously we don't want your proposals, but if there's anything where you want to network with people in different experts, what we have is I'm going to send this presentation out and there is a WhatsApp, there's a way you could connect to, we've got different global, in the different grand challenge, you know, in different topics, we have a bunch of UK experts and academics or professionals, even from Pakistan, on these different topic groups. So if you go to our website, you'll be able to see topics in agriculture, AI and digital, in healthcare, in energy, water. And I'm quite sure that most of the bids that have been shortlisted will cover some of those topics. And you've got an opportunity to go on those WhatsApp groups, introduce yourself, introduce your outline of your idea, and to see whether there's collaborators there. And one of the things I'm going to try and do is to support some of these shortlisted projects to see if we can help you get collaboration from some of the universities in the UK. If you want our help, of course, you can do this yourself as well. So, I mean, there's a big list I've just sort of copy and pasted of the different ideas, but I think the key thing here, like I said, is try to see what you can synthesize from different disciplines and bring something completely new. Omar, that was more what I had to say, but I'm happy to take questions at the end, if that's okay.
Sure, that's fine. Thank you so much, Jawad. So just to highlight, teaming and consortium building is critical to putting a winning proposal for GCF and LCF. The more we stress, we can't stress enough about team building and consortium building in these kinds of proposals. It was highlighted by Graham. This was highlighted by Dr. Jawad also. And it's very gracious of Jawad to offer help with networking. He runs a charity. And we also plan on hosting a research brokerage sort of an event where we would like those consortia who are struggling with perhaps their team and perhaps they feel they can add to their team and strengthen their proposal. They can come and pitch. Short pitches will be given, and then those universities and collaborators who express interest in collaborating with you will be match made during these sessions on 20th and 21st. Multidisciplinarity is also at the heart of GCF and LCF. The kind of world we live in today, the kind of problems we face today, the solutions to these complex problems cannot be solved with a very single sort of myopic view on one discipline. So multiple disciplines have to come together, and diversity is key to building the team. So these are some salient features, points pointed out by Jawad, and also in Graham's presentation that you should all keep a note of as you continue to finalize your proposals for GCF and look to apply for the LCF next month. So with that, I would like to invite our Professor Ihtisham, if we could have a discussion with Dr. Kauser first, and then bring you in because he's been a panel chair. He's got vast experience, perhaps one of the senior most researchers we have in Pakistan, with significant amounts of funding that he's received and deployed successfully, with lots of learnings on ground. And then we would also want your feedback, since you would have heard Professor Ihtisham by then, everyone. You have also had a very vast career. So if you would allow, we would perhaps like to hear also Dr. Kauser Malik's views on GCF and LCF and some of the proposals he saw last year as a panel chair. Over to you, Dr. Kauser.
Thank you. I thought that we can have at the Sham Saab talk first so that I can come at the last. Is this okay?
If you prefer,
Yeah,
sir, you've been waiting, so I thought I'd let you in first. But over to you, Professor Ihtisham.
I think he's our guest also. So we would like to have him first. You see, thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much, Dr. Kauser Saab, and Omar, thank you very much for inviting me to share this platform. I'm going to just talk about and share my experience of doing some work in Pakistan. As Professor Dar mentioned, I established a research center in Pakistan, interdisciplinary research center in biomedical materials at ComSet's University Lahore, which alhamdulillah has been going from strength to strength. The thing related to GCRF, which I would like to highlight in here, yes, Jawad has mentioned interdisciplinary research, multidisciplinary research. One element which is the key is the translational nature. So that's why I have been advocating in Pakistan that any research we do, we need to ensure that it is going in a direction which is going to solve some problem. And that is exactly the grand challenge, our local challenge. We need to identify those in a very precise and focused way. Looking at the two elements which was highlighted by our first speaker, Dr. Harrison, when we are talking about the novelty, and the nature of the novelty must be linked with the translation. There is no point of doing a blue sky research which is not taking us towards either a product, either a solution that needs to be identified. So whenever we are putting a proposal together, yes, the novelty element must be there, but the translational element with clear milestones and deliverables identified, that should be our prime focus. The other thing I would like to highlight is that whenever you're putting a proposal together, either it's a GCF or LCF focus, make sure the institutions from different spectrum, they are partnering and collaborating together. For example, I shared my experience of the Interdisciplinary Research Center in Biomedical Materials. I have said to my team, look, I don't want any project which you are submitting on your own. It has to be linked up. If it is for dentistry, dental materials, it has to be with a dental school, with a industry who is producing material for dentistry. Similarly, if we are looking at, for example, let's say we're looking at bone replacement, which was our primary focus at the Interdisciplinary Research Center in Biomedical Materials, then we need to identify appropriate orthopedic surgeons. We need to identify any industry which is really focused and very happy and ready to collaborate to take those materials from lab to the commercialization and commercialization to the patient. So that pathway needs to be clearly developed. The other thing which Jawad Sab very nicely highlighted, the risk management and risk assessment. When I look at the proposal in Pakistan, those are the elements which are very often missing. And I'm sure Dr. Kausar Malik is a very experienced person in Pakistan. He will highlight those as well. And I will request him to highlight. What do we mean by risk management in Pakistan? We need to monitor these projects on regular basis. So the milestones and deliverables which have been identified in the Gantt chart, those should be visited not at the end of the project, but routinely, quarterly, or even on monthly basis if required. So maybe at some stages, the micromanagement, macro management of the project that needs to kick in. So those are really key elements. Now, coming to the international collaboration. International collaboration is the key. And I tell you why I'm really emphasizing on those. We in Pakistan, we have got a lot of very good, young, talented researchers. And what I have noticed over the years, that they very often they require guidance. And why there is still a gap in there. I share an example with you. Whenever a person comes abroad, either into UK or goes to US or goes to other country to do a PhD, when they come back, they are thrown into deep water. They just hold an academic position. They haven't done a postdoc. They haven't gone through the vigorous training process, which is required here in the UK and the US and the other European countries. So it is really crucial that the international guidance from the established researchers to those youngsters is available in terms of managing a project, running a project. Running a project is a totally different ball game. You get the funding. Yes, that is the first hurdle done. But the next step is you got to deliver as well. So as a PI, you need to ensure that the project milestones are delivered in a timely fashion and in a focused fashion. So I will really emphasize on the international collaboration. For example, if you're looking at on a battery storage area, the reason I'm highlighting that Professor Jawad Dar is one of the experts in the area, and he's in one of the top institutions at UCL. So we should be asking him to provide the guidance which is fit for purpose for the local challenge, because he is again an expert on the international arena. So a combination of both those two partners, it will bring success. And here, again, I will highlight to the HEC. Sometimes there are researchers who are very top researchers known internationally, they may not be in the top 200 universities, they may not be in top 10 universities of the world, but they will be some of the key researchers in that field. So, for example, Professor Dar again mentioned Nicola Love. She comes in an institution which is, how can I say that, in the ranking, it doesn't come in the top 200, but she is an excellent researcher with wealth of experience of leading projects in Pakistan. So those are the people who can contribute a great deal from the international arena. So we need to identify those experts who can actually guide the projects in Pakistan, and they are familiar with the local challenges. So when you, and again, I will say to the all the participants here, that if you are looking at for the international collaboration, make sure you identify a person who is also familiar with the local challenges as well. So that will reap the benefit in the long run. And finally, in Pakistan, where the bottleneck is, when it comes to the commercializations, the public sector universities, they are not allowed to actually form a company, take the products to the commercialization aspect. That is the bottleneck I have faced over the years, because that policy change has to be there. And I know, Omar Saab, you are actually making some efforts and making a policy document in there. This is really required, that when we are taking the local challenges, when we are taking the GCF, when we are producing some product, that should benefit the local people as well, and also the global people globally as well. So first, for example, let me share with you an example of my center. We have got a lot of low-hanging fruit in there. We have developed the artificial bone, we have developed the artificial skin, and we are giving the knowledge to other companies to exploit, but we are not allowed to form company from the university platform ourselves. So that's where probably Dr. Kausar Malik and the HEC, they can come together and form a policy document. Me and Professor Dar, we will be very happy to help what is required in that front. So just in closing, whenever all the applicants are putting a proposal together, make sure there is an application, make sure there is a clear pathway from initiating a project from a lab, not only to the commercialization, but also in terms of the end product. In my case, the healthcare is reaching to the patients and ultimately improving the quality of life of millions. That's what I'm aiming for. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ihtisham, for some insightful recommendations for our audience today. Your points have been noted, even though for today's session, this may not be a relevant discussion, but within the scope of HEDP Component 1, we have been given the mandate to actually transform the universities into entrepreneurial universities, to remodel the business incubation centers in the ORIX, Offices of Research, Innovation, Commercialization, and to give guidelines to universities on how they can facilitate technology commercialization activities. The current legal governance structures of universities are not very conducive to supporting that activity. The IP policies within universities, the employment policies within universities are quite restrictive and prohibitive. So we have done a complete mapping of the knowledge innovation ecosystem, and we have given some guidelines, and these are some, and this information has been disseminated with universities. So as they plan their projects, they should keep that mapping report and the recommendations and guidelines we have shared with them in mind, so that they can, in their project, plan not just for creating knowledge, but also for creating impact from that knowledge and bringing that lab to the market ultimately. So with those
absolutely, just a final point I just mentioned, you're absolutely correct. It has to be impact based. Make sure the project which are there, they are creating an impact, social impact, economic impact. And as the previous speaker, both of speakers, they mentioned, they actually is providing the training element as well, which is going to equip the next generation.
Absolutely, Professor Tasham. So the less we say about, we need to talk more about commercialization, and that's the sort of weak link in our entire knowledge innovation economy at the moment. So my focus, in fact, is actually working on that section. But today's session is more to basically guide our audience on how to write winning proposals for Grand Challenge Fund and Local Challenge Fund, because the starting point of building a knowledge innovation economy is to improve the quality and of course the quantity of commercializable research, which stands at perhaps not a reasonable level currently. Once we have quality a supply of commercializable research coming in, perhaps which is also need driven and market driven, which is linked with our industrial and societal needs, then perhaps the second leg of it, commercialization, is what we need to sort of focus on. But the policies need to be put in place, and so that the researchers who are planning their projects, they can plan the entire journey of bringing their knowledge from lab all the way to the market and delivering impact. So thank you again for highlighting this point, very critical point. But with that, we would like to also now hear from Dr. Kausar, who's an institution in his own self and has done a number of projects and very impactful projects, and have also been reviewing our proposals last year. So he has a wealth of knowledge, and we would love to hear from Dr. Kausar on what kind of guidelines you would want to give to our aspiring researchers who are putting their proposals together for GCF and LCF as we speak. With that, over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Umar. And I want to thank all the speakers, especially Dr. Harrison and Sham Saab and Dar Saab, for giving an excellent overview of all the things that I was thinking of saying, you see. So everything has been said, and so therefore I don't need to give you any PowerPoint presentation, because all the facts have been explained, you see. I would like to share with you some of my experiences, you see. I mean, during our time of active research, there were no grand challenges or local challenges, you see, but we have been able to do or attract funding, large funding also, from international organizations like US National Academy of Sciences, like US National Science Foundation, and common commodity funds who funded us on cotton, on doing all the biotechnology of cotton, you see, and that was about for $1.6 million at that time, and that was in about 98 or 99, and that was between our institution, which is not in IBG in Faisalabad, and then University of Arizona, Tucson in US, and John Ennis Institute in UK, you see. So these were the three partners of this project, and I hope that it qualifies for Grand Challenge Fund, you see, which we call it now. But still, activity on that level has been going on, and with any other colleagues of mine as well. I would like to explain to you all, and I think that will be better if you keep in mind that what is the psyche and what is the experience of our scientific community. Our scientific community has been nurtured over the last at least 10-15 years through NRPU, which probably all of you are aware. This is the small grants project of HEC. And that has been our lifeline, you see, the lifeline of majority of my colleagues and all over in all the universities, you see, So that has been the experience. And based on that experience, HEC launched this GCF, which is Grand Fund, whatever it is, and then LCF, you see, So, my experience, as Umar has also said, that I have been involved in the evaluation of our first round of GCF and LCF, and also TCF as well, you see, which was Technology Commercialization Fund. And invariably we found that all those projects which were being submitted for GCF could have been submitted for an NRPU. You see, so the tendency has always been the same, you know, and therefore this is, all of us have been emphasizing that collaboration is the key, or interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary activities have been the key for these two challenge projects, you see, you know, and that collaboration is also a very peculiar thing, you see, you know. When you insist on collaboration, many of my colleagues try to gather all their friends and everybody around, and they allot some funding to them, and etc., in a very mechanical manner, you see, you know, and that when we evaluate, we try to find out that what is the contribution of all these sectoral collaborators, the academic collaborators, and all those co-PIs and all that, you see, you know. So the culture, our scientific culture, has to change, you see, you know. This is my experience also, and my observation as well, you see, you know, that we tend to have you know, people around, because it's a requirement for the Grand Challenge Fund that you should have a consortium, you see, that by consortium, the HEC means, you know, people who are genuinely involved in developing that technology, in developing that to achieve the objectives, you see, you know. But somehow in many of the cases, that is not the case, you see, you know, and therefore we were so sorry. We knew that a lot of effort has gone into putting all these together, but we could not help in telling them that that's not the objective, you see, you know. So therefore we have to do a lot of effort in developing this culture of genuine collaboration, you see, you know. I have been giving examples, you know, majority in at least our area of life sciences, I have now never seen any paper which is solo, you know, one author or two author paper, you see, you know. There are, I mean, dozens of authors for a publication, and those authors are from different countries also, different laboratories, etc., you know. So that is the kind of collaboration that we would like to encourage in the country, you see, you know. It has to be genuine. It has to be focused on a particular, solving a particular problem, you see. Secondly, I would request, since many of my younger colleagues are here, I mean, most important is selection of the topic, you see, the selection of the problem, you know. I mean, you can't convert any problem into a grand challenge, you see. I mean, grand challenge has to be a challenge, you see, you know. And so if I am doing some work, you know, and all of a sudden I come to know that HEC is giving billions of rupees for research projects, so I try to convert all that into a grand challenge, you see. That doesn't happen. You have to pick the right kind of a problem, and then go for it, you see, and have a genuine interaction with your colleagues, with your partners, with your collaborators, with your sectoral collaborators. Secondly, you see, I hate to say that this, I mean, this challenge fund, this Grand Challenge Fund needs a lot of experience of the PI, you see. You know, it is not that you have just come back from your PhD and you are ambitious enough to apply for a Grand Challenge Fund. That doesn't happen, you see. I mean, you have to have a managerial ability, you have to have a leadership ability, you see, and a demonstrable ability, you see. And therefore, one has to, I mean, look at those proposals which have all the ingredients which Dr. Harrison has also outlined, and Jawada also said, and everything that we talk about is available on the HEC website. You see, I have been telling everybody that HEC website is one of the most comprehensive websites. You see, so you don't have to run here and there to find answers. Every answer is available in that website. You see, so I would request all of you to take seriously whatever is there on the website. I have all the documents here, which I have just now downloaded from HEC website, and all the theme priorities and everything are already there on the website. You see, so these themes we had as far as life sciences and health area is concerned, we had listed all these priority areas, but these priority areas are there, but your input, the input of the researcher has to be there, that how he or she sees them in the I mean for grand challenge project, you see, So all the things that have been tested, I mean, we must go meticulously and try to I mean, answer all the questions and meet all the requirements which are there for the challenge fund. Secondly, the most important thing which I think, and I've been telling that to HEC at every level, that one of the things which is missing is, and as the Sham Saab has mentioned it, was about monitoring. See, we have not been doing a genuine monitoring of the projects that we award, you see. I mean, if a person says that after 2 years, he or she will be able to do all this, then one should be able to monitor that whether that person has done it or not, you see, I mean, I can give you an example, we got a fairly good grant from the Punjab Agriculture Research Board to develop transgenic wheat with increased iron and zinc bioavailability. So this was just to meet the micronutrient efficiencies and to see all that. We had written there that 1 year we'll do this, etc., etc. You see, their monitors used to come every 6 months to see whether we have done those things that we had explained, or those things which we had put into the project, you see, So we were not angry or upset on that, because we thought that, okay, if this organization is paying for all the research, they have every right to see whether the funding which they have given is being utilized or not, you see, So similarly, HEC has to develop a thing, you see. I had told earlier on when Zainul Abdin was here, I was telling him as well, and I wrote a formal letter as well, that we must have a monitoring and evaluation wing. I mean, they have a monitoring evaluation for looking at the administrative parts of the universities, but for R&D, you see, there has to be a monitoring and evaluation wing. It should monitor the research, you see, that how is it being done, you see, So this is other very thorny issue, is that I have been very much opposed to the idea of a research intensive universities. You see, why to divide the universities on that basis? I mean, I assure you that all the audience or all the people who are attending this, majority of them are from universities which are supposed to be not research intensive, you see. So the liberty for any scientist who's working in a university should be given, you see, that whether a person can come up with ideas, I mean, the ideas are not a monopoly of a particular university. I mean, it can be anywhere, you see, as I think Dar Saab or mentioned, gave some example also. So anyway, this is one important thing that we have been asking, that we should open it up, and because GCF, about which we have been talking a lot, is only, according to the rules, is only eligible the research intensive universities, which are, I mean, according to the HECs, I don't know what was the parameter, that they have kept only 20, I think, universities which are in the category of research intensive universities, and all other 160 universities are non-research intensive universities, which is strange. You see, anyway, I have taken it, and I think it will probably be changed. You see, yeah, this is the list of research intensive institutions, and also the National Textile University Faisalabad is also included in that. And anyway, but this was just an idea, that we should do. I mean, in the end, I can only say that all these GCF and LCF are extremely important and very attractive if the faculty is interested in developing something useful for the society. And for that, I would request all my colleagues to study the 17 goals of sustainable development, you see, because these are most important, and these are applicable to both the Grand Challenge Fund as well and the local challenge as well, you see, because many of the goals which are in there can be used for developing a local, especially local challenge funds, you see. For example, water, the clean water, health, and all those areas, you see, which are there, can be converted into some goals of your LCF or ECF, you see, So, I mean, these are quite good times, and I hope that if we can get rid of these pandemic, and, we can do much better, you see. So I wish you all the best, and hope that many of you are able to win these grants. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kausar, for your wisdom, and your sharing your experience with our audience today. It'll go a long way in helping them, perhaps improving their proposals and adding strength to their team and improving their chances for success. We have the luxury of looking at some of the past failures, reasons for success, and reasons for failure. We have looked at the entire list of proposals received last year and done some analysis, high-level analysis on what are the major reasons for failure, and what are the key areas for our researchers to consider as they develop and finalize their proposals for GCF this year. So we would like to share some of that data with you. So if we look at, So if you look at the reasons for rejection at the subject panel review last year, we see that project methodology is the main reason. For some reason, I can't see the bottom end of my screen, so I'll have to.
Yeah, Omar, can I comment briefly on this as well?
Yes, absolutely, sir.
You see, these are very important information, you see, I mean, I forgot to mention about the two very important points, you see. One is the innovation, you see. I mean, what is the innovation in or any knowledge has been added or not, you see, in many of the cases, it was just repetition of already published work or already done technologies, and people are, I'm trying to do it in Pakistan, you see. So that is no argument, you see. And secondly, and I personally go to the budget part first, you see, and I can gauge whether this person or this proposal is a serious one or not, you see, because some of the budgeting part is so exorbitant and without any sense, you see, and all the equipment which is there, or having all these sectoral and collaborators and all collaborators, they are all being paid salaries, their percentages of the salaries and all that. That I think has to, I mean, the authors have to be very, very careful and have to be honest. You see, this is most important. You see that if you are trying to have these projects just to have your friends to have some money, or you have to some money, then please don't do it. And it has to be very genuine. And I have also, again, I have written formally to HEC that they should change their methodology of giving salaries, percentage of salaries per month. You see, you know, to all these collaborators and all that, that is virtually tantamount to corrupting the scientific community, and please don't do it, you see. So I think, I mean, I've written to Ataur Rahman Sahab also, and he has said that, yes, I agree. And so let's see that some changes. But I would request my colleagues who are going to write this proposal, please take these things into consideration, and don't inflate the budget. And also, you must ask yourself, are you adding something new? Is there any innovation in it? Or is it kind of that we used to say Me Too research also, you know? And so these are important issues that we should keep in mind. Sorry, Omar, I mean, carry on.
No, not at all, sir. Thank you so much for your feedback on this. As Dr. Kausa mentioned, the success for HEC is measured at two different levels. For us, success is not only measured the fact that we are able to spend the money that we have been given under Grand Challenge and Local Challenge Fund, but also success is measured for us with another layer of development linked indicators that measures whether those consortia who've gotten the money are able to use that money to deliver impact. When our experts and panel chairs are reviewing your proposals, they review your proposals across many different indicators. Some of these indicators have been highlighted, and we've also done some analysis on why proposals were rejected. What were the reasons that underpinned the rejection of most of the proposals? And project methodology seems to be, perhaps one of the major reasons here. And in project methodology, basically, if you have not defined your problem and you've not given a methodological solution to addressing that problem, if you can't convince the reviewers and the panel chairs that your methodology will be able to address that problem, and there's no way you can perhaps win this grant. So this is one of the key elements. Other than that, budget, literature review, lack of project impact, these are, and also innovation capacity and principal investigators capacity who's going to lead that project are some main reasons for rejecting these proposals. So you've got to keep in mind all these issues. One of the points that Dr. Kausa, you mentioned about differentiating between universities, research intensive and otherwise. Yes, this differentiation should not exist, and there's a lot of discussion that have taken place on this topic. But in support of my colleagues, Dr. Zan and others who are behind sort of designing some of these along with the World Bank team, more often than not, we see that some of the larger universities who have more resources, they benefit from these larger programs. They're able to get most of this funding, and the lesser, perhaps resourceful universities perhaps are not able to see so much success. So they wanted to create, who designed LCF, wanted to create an instrument especially for these universities who usually are not able to compete and get those kinds of fundings and lift their capacity over a period of time. We wanted to create a special instrument for them so that those funds can be allocated to these universities. We believe that there's only one way forward, that is to advance without leaving anyone behind. And so that was the inspiration in designing this intervention. But as you know, like science and social sector interventions, also these are experiments. We can design certain interventions. We don't know what they will end up yielding. In a few years' time, we will realize whether these were good interventions or bad interventions, and perhaps we can learn from that. But that was the motivation behind differentiating between LCF element 1 and LCF element 2. to give an opportunity to those universities who are struggling to compete with the larger, more resourceful universities. It should not be viewed as if we are trying to create classes and differentiating between universities which are research intensive and those which are not. We would want everyone to be research intensive. In this knowledge age, perhaps research, R&D is one of the most critical skills and elements that universities need to be imparting to their researchers and knowledge workers. If we also look at...
Umar, could I make a quick point here, if I may, just interject?
Absolutely, Dr. Jawad, please,
So,
absolutely.
Look, my firm belief in is that I think what in Pakistan needs to happen more, and I've been a long time visiting professor, I've traveled a lot, is the research culture and the culture of uplifting institutions. And I think it's already been highlighted by the speakers. For the future, what I would say is the best projects are where we can have the top researchers leading those projects, but also at the same time uplifting the community and those universities which are less research intensive to guide them and educate them how to run projects like that in the future. Because I think you have to look at where you're starting from and where you want to end up. And what we want to end up is perhaps a model where all universities have some research, are research intensive. That would be the holy grail. And they do great teaching as well. But we're not there yet. And I just think the only way they're going to learn is by working with these top researchers, because you do have top researchers. But the problem is they're not educating everybody else about how to run big projects. And I think that's what's missing, is the sort of community building. And I think that's how you can engineer that maybe in the future. And I hope I can help and others can help as well. So that's all I wanted to come in and say.
Jawad, if I may ask Umar Sabi, if I'm allowed,
Sure.
please. You're absolutely right. I think it's the running of the big projects that is a big challenge I've seen in Pakistan. There are only seasoned researchers who are established academics. They have got the ability and capacity to run the big projects. When it comes to the youngsters who are climbing the ladder and making their career, they are the ones who are struggling. So HEC should construct a platform in which they can bring the new researchers from the institutions who are becoming research active or have the potential of becoming research active, link them up with those institutions where there are established researchers and those are intensive, so-called research intensive institutions, and asking them to put a project together.
Professor Ihtisham, you're spot on. Interestingly, I mean, a higher education development program is a pretty large program. It's a very well thought out, very well designed program. It has got several components. What we are looking at are two funds, which is a small subset of only one of the components of this entire program. But within this one component, we are doing many other interventions. Other than these two funds, we have set up Technology Transfer Support Fund, and this year we are also launching Startup Innovator Seed Fund. But one of the interventions, in addition to these four funds, that we are a bit late on because of procurement challenges, but generally what we're looking to do is create a virtual innovation research and an incubation environment, where essentially we'll be connecting all the innovation hubs, R&D, ORIX, and R&D hubs across Pakistan, across all these universities, so the researchers can share data, can collaborate, can showcase what they're doing, industry, investors, other stakeholders of the knowledge innovation ecosystem, they can all, come together in that platform, exchange ideas, collaborate to deliver impact. So that is one of the interventions we are planning on doing. But we believe that once we have created that platform, we would ideally would have liked to carry on these activities after creating that platform, so that we make the stakeholders of the knowledge innovation ecosystem used to that new environment as part of our change management methodology of bringing about a behavior change and creating awareness of this new environment and how to interact with each other in this new environment. But because of some time lags and issues, we are a little late on that development of that platform. But very soon that will happen. And once that happens, that will unleash many opportunities for researchers to collaborate and also to learn from the other senior researchers who've been doing tremendous job. So I think you were saying something, if you wanted to interject, respond to that, Dr. Tisham?
No, but I totally agree with you. I think that those are the elements which you have highlighted. Those are the things which we must be implementing, and the policy document which you were talking about and you discussed with Jawad Saab, I think these should be embedded in there somehow. So when it reaches that stage.
Please, my request to the audience, stay muted. We will be starting the Q&A session in about 10 odd minutes, but till then, please remain muted. So apologies for that.
Umar, maybe I can touch base with you separately on this issue. This is probably require a long debate, and we can do that.
Yes. Yeah, because the focus of today's session, as I would like to remind everyone, is that we are here to help our researchers who are looking to finalize their proposals for GCF and LCF. This is the first of a series of webinars we are planning this week and next week. There will be about 3 to 4 webinars each week leading up to 2 research brokerage events, where we would also like to make sure that those consortia who are struggling in finalizing their teams or have the right international partners or other stakeholders who they believe are relevant to their proposal, we'll try to create an opportunity for them to showcase what they're working on, and for the audience to express interest, and for us to help connect them so that they can be able to submit better proposals. But now, coming back to proposal rejection rationale at the high level panel review stage, we again see that project methodology remained a major issue in most of the proposals that were rejected. The intended impact that those proposals and research designs were showing also was an issue. Holistic project design was lacking. Limited partnerships, team capacity was an issue. Ultimately, in Grant Challenge, we're looking for scale, and if you're looking at a problem that's not big enough, you may not qualify. So some of those projects were also rejected because of that reason. Ultimately, if we are delivering a large project, trying to solve a large problem, the institution in which we are operating should offer some resources and some capacity. So we do evaluate institutional capacity in these proposals, and that was also an issue. Principal investigator, almost all our speakers today highlighted, because that's one person who's leading these projects, and they should have vast experience in implementing such projects. So these were cost-benefit analysis and high budget, again, was a reason. If the cost-benefit analysis, the cost is within the range, but the cost-benefit analysis is good, I think the budget becomes a secondary issue. But if the cost-benefit analysis is not good and the budgets are high, then perhaps it becomes an issue. So these are some themes that we wanted to put in front of you. The ideal project proposal with good and bad examples. We have some reviews and for confidentiality reasons, we can't put those proposals in front of you, but we can at least discuss the reviews from the review panel on the good proposals and on the bad proposals. And we have taken some examples from the last year's good proposals for GCF and LCF. So when, the first foremost, when you're looking to develop a proposal, you need to be able to define the problem. So definition of a problem and limiting the scope of the project, because if you expand the scope too much, you may have defined the problem, but if you try to expand the scope of that problem that you're trying to solve in that project, the reviewers may feel that this may not be possible within the budget or within the time limits given to you. So try to limit the scope. Don't expand the scope only because you want to expand the budget. So problem definition and limiting the scope is critical. Give a brief description of the problem your project is aiming to solve. Keep it short, concise, and include data in your writing. Don't make a generic problem. Kind of defend that problem definition with some data, with some evidence. Keep the targeted audience in mind while defining your problem. Who are you solving the problem for? Whether you're designing the solution, are you centering that solution around the people for whom you're solving that problem? That's critical. Use facts, not opinion. Although you want your audience to understand the severity of a problem, but you don't want to exaggerate. Instead, use data from research to back up your assertions. And lastly, limit the scope of your problem, keep the objectives of the donor, and in this particular case, HEC's priorities in mind. So define the problem, limit the scope. I give you two reviews, one from a good proposal and one from a bad proposal. When you look at the review from the good proposal, the reviewer says the research agenda fits in well with the scope and spirit of LCF. And the research agenda holds the promise of successfully localizing the relevant SDGs and linking them with the overall national SDG framework in an integrated and sustainable manner. The full project proposal also contains a research dissemination program, which is expected to generate considerable impact for the uplift of the marginalized segments. Now, when we look at the review from the bad proposals, the reviewers comment, the panel members are of the view that it seems quite a general written proposal rather than a well thought out project. As it was identified by reviewer that the project details are vague and it is not clear which actual intervention will be made. For instance, the project talks about improving infrastructural facilities without detailing which facilities are they referring to. Again, we do not find out what is the actual intervention that is being complemented. Now, someone has defined a problem and designed a solution and submitted a proposal, but they have not even defined the interventions. Really, I've implemented as project lead over about 24 social sector development initiatives at the national level. And, perhaps social sector development projects, we can draw some inferences from there. The way we write proposals is very similar. In a social sector development project, we are all trained to define our interventions along a result-based chain, which starts from your interventions. Interventions, inputs, outputs, outcomes, impact. There's a complete result-based chain. At each stage in this result-based chain, that some people also refer to as theory of change or logical framework. You need to define KPIs, results that you're trying to achieve, and means of verification of those KPIs. Unless you're able to define to that granular level of detail, you can never convince a reviewer that when you're putting a budget together, you would not have that knowledge to be able to actually convert, your idea of what you're working on into a real project. So these are some things, and in the coming sessions, we'll be talking in detail about some of these projects, how these logical frameworks are developed, how these result-based chains are developed, how these interventions are defined, how the KPIs are defined, and how you choose means of verification, and then how do you monitor them over the course of the project. So this is the backbone of any social sector, and in this particular case, the kind of projects you are working on, these logical frameworks are going to be the backbone of your proposals also. So spend enough time in thinking through to the you can think of a problem at a 40,000 feet level, and you can drill it down to a granular level of detail. So the level of detail that's required in these proposals is the granular level of detail, right? So, and in this comment that we saw from the reviewer, the bad proposal was talking at a pretty 40,000 feet level, and he was not able to convert that thinking and the problem that he had and the solution he had in mind to solve that problem to a specific set of interventions that would be performed during the course of the project, and the resources required and the budget required, of course, how he would be then able to estimate that. You can't do it if you haven't thought about it. So as we move on to the next slide, defining the problem. After defining the problem, defining the project methodology, which was again cited as one of the primary reasons for rejection of these projects. If you've defined the problem, but you have no idea how you would methodologically go and solve that problem, you don't stand a chance of winning these grand local challenge funds. So methodology is critical, because methodology is actually the solution design, right? Explaining how problems will be addressed by your methodology needs to be part of it. Clearly defining the activities and steps to be taken, providing measurable and time-bound activities. Deliberate why is your methodology the better option or the other ones. You need to do an economic analysis there also. Discuss why other methodologies won't work for your solution. So these are some salient points that we feel are critical while you're developing methodology. And during the course of the next set of webinars, I'll be working with you and showing you some good methodologies, how we've developed those methodologies and how you could perhaps further fine tune yours. So when we look at a good project methodology, the reviewer comment, the FPP has a well-structured research plan comprising of a clearly defined medical research question, research hypotheses, research aim, research objectives, measurable outcomes, and sequentially laid out project phases. The role of the local and foreign collaborators, academic and industry, are clearly defined. The FPP also contains an effective research dissemination plan. The FPP clearly lays out the roles and responsibilities for the academic collaborators and the local stakeholders, partners in the context of various components and phases of the project. The activities of the local partners, stakeholders have been clearly incorporated in the FPP, and the academic collaborators have well-established partnerships with local partners, stakeholders for executing. I can't see the last line, but on the bad proposal, if you look at the review, methodology is the crux of this proposal and unfortunately not written in detail. Members failed to see any engineering design, any tested or any mathematical equation. The PI explains all in very generic terms, which makes it difficult for me to gauge the success of this proposal. This project was not accepted for the next stage for this reason. Proposing a solution, identify and explore all possible solutions, conduct a cost-benefit analysis, socioeconomic issues in mind need to also be kept in mind while selecting the best option. Highlight how your selected solution is the best fit that resolves the problem. Present the solution's larger impact other than core work. Provide as many research back examples as you can. Present facts. Examples of a good solution. The proposed work has direct relevance to the priority thematic area, which will be implemented by the establishment of Wolbachia-based vector control strategy to target local mosquito vectors in Pakistan for eliminating mosquito-borne diseases in Pakistan. This is a very specific problem and a very specific solution that's been designed with the level of detail that the review was looking for. A comprehensive literature review has been incorporated in the proposal, which justifies the approach and vision of the PI and her team. A number of evidence of success stories for the Wolbachia-based vector control strategy have been cited and discussed. The proposed work has explained the integrated approach for achieving the objective within the allocated time frame, and the budget is quite rational and reasonable for the proposed work. So this is the quality of a good solution that you need to present. When you look at the bad review, as per panel discussion and reviewers' comments, the proposal exaggerates the impact of proposed work on the mentioned thematic areas. Although the proposed work can add value to the manufacturing industry, its impact on Pakistan industry is highly exaggerated. No relevant data has been provided to support their claim. The literature review fails to provide a state-of-the-art research in the area. The most recent paper mentioned is from 2017. This project is not accepted naturally for the reasons cited by the reviewer. Last but not least, budget. A well-defined budget in line with your proposed set of interventions is critical for winning this grant. Budgeting is an essential part of securing project funding. While creating the budget, be clear on the project scope, timelines, and deliverables. Clearly define the resources that you require for the project. Assign amounts to your project tasks, milestones, equipment, and labor. Keep in mind taxes and other fees. Do not increase the budget unnecessarily to reach grants maximum limit. These are comparative grants. Keep cost-benefit analysis in mind. 13% of all projects at the subject panel review level for GCF and LCF 2020 were rejected due to high budgets. Good budget review, as this project is a large-scale project covering off multiple aspects of urban planning and requires multidisciplinary experts and numbers of research assistants, so the proposed budget is justifiable. When you look at the review on a bad budget, as per panel discussion and reviewers' comments, the PI mentions 4 to 5 draft reports as outcome of this project with a cost of 200+ million rupees. This is little ironic as the project advocates low-cost housing. Panel members fail to see any concrete roadmap where these draft reports can be transformed to products. This point need to be addressed seriously before investing such a huge money for draft reports. Background is well written. However, the dissemination plan failed to deliver the goals of a GCF. Environmental consequences are taken up in a rather casual manner. This project was not accepted for the reasons again cited in this review. Before I open up the floor for Q&A from our panel, esteemed panel, I also want to show you just a short example of a social sector development program. In the last 3 years, this government has initiated several social sector initiatives, out of which some of them were designed by myself. The program, which is known as Naya Housing Program, I'm the chief architect for that program. I designed that program a few years back for the State Bank, and now it's going into implementation stage. Similarly, I designed another program, which essentially is what I call agriculture scaling up program for income and rural employment, aspiring to transform our agriculture sector by leveraging technology. This is a blueprint that I developed for the Ministry of Science and was presented to the Prime Minister and was accepted. And the first leg of this entire program is currently underway, is being implemented, and that is the Apiculture Scaling Up Program for Income and Rural Employment. And this was one of the programs because of which Pakistan also got nominated as a champion of nature in Davos in World Economic Forum just recently. This program falls under the Billion Tree Program. So I just wanted to show you some high-level salient. So basically, when we designed this program, we looked at high-level research that I had conducted about almost 7 years back for State Bank, in which I mapped personally, I'm the author of that report, all the value chains farm to fork across all districts. And we identified several bottlenecks that were holding agriculture value chains from accelerating and delivering the outcomes that we all expect from the agriculture sector. One of the sectors was identified as apiculture, in which the research showed that almost 80+% of our potential to harness apiculture in Pakistan is being wasted every year because we don't have enough hives in the system. Apiculture, the science of converting nectar into honey through colonies and bees is called apiculture. And this is a classic triple bottom line program, which not only allows us to lift the poverty levels, improve the income levels of the families involved at the beekeeping level, it also helps improve the agriculture yields. It's a cross-cutting benefit to all agriculture value chains. Wherever you're doing apiculture, in some cases, you have much more improvement in agriculture yields than other cases. For example, in edible oils, in citrus, there's tremendous uplift in yields, whereas in some other value chains, there's less. But then also this value chain helps in reversing the climate change issues, right? So because the bee, when it picks up the nectar, it pollinates so that there's more greenery, and because of that more greenery, there's this reverse impact on the climate in countries, especially where we're adversely affected by climate. Such initiatives, are essentially checking all the boxes that we perhaps need to check in a social sector development program. We designed the program not only looking at one side of the project, we looked at both the demand and supply side, and we looked at essentially what are the bottlenecks, what are the interventions that we need to design, how do we bring these existing beekeepers and certify their quality. On the other side, the program also involved in establishing a standardization and formulation lab, so the apiculture products could be certified, where we could perhaps also provide some export readiness certifications so that we can link them to the global value chains. But to strengthen the value chain, we also looked at many other aspects of it. We looked at the cross-disciplinary and cross-ministerial support that perhaps is required, the role of Ministry of Science, the role of universities, the role of Ministry of Commerce, the role of Ministry of Finance. How do we make this program self-sustainable? We didn't want this program to be run on government grants. Ultimately, we wanted the market forces to run this program sustainably. So bringing the banks and creating apiculture financing instruments, perhaps initially getting some subsidy to get starter packages for beekeepers with buyback arrangements under one common legal structure that would buy out all the apiculture products, but at the same time also provide equity vesting rights. So it was a complete program that was thought out that would go and run a pilot initially and then scale up. And we defined all these components of this. As you move into the next slide, we designed this 3-year project, keeping the theory of change in mind. What we were planning on doing in the early stage was to perhaps build the basic, the capacity, the basic infrastructure, the basic tools, the basic knowledge that was required was essentially developed, is being planned to develop during the conception to embryo stage. As we move from the embryo to infant stage, we want to develop some business models providing solutions for VC constraints that we had highlighted, sector associations to become more dominant, B2B value chains establish and initial upscaling, typical facilitation support in coaching, trust building, joint innovation, development and innovation funding, and attracting commercial finance. And finally, as we move to the infant to mature, we wanted this industry to become self-sustainable, sector and branch organizations to be recognized, professional business and financial service capacity to be enhanced, demand-driven knowledge development happening, upscaling of innovative models, and new innovation, creating competitive growth, typical facilitation support in expertise for specific issues in R&D to be provided through universities on an ongoing basis. So these were some, high-level features of this program with very clear implementation timelines, budgets, and the roles of all the different institutions were defined also in the implementation mechanism. So, just to, I wanted to give this a high-level overview of this program, because when we designed this program, and this design was programmed only a few months back, and it didn't take us too long to design this program, but the steps that we followed in identifying, what kind of interventions, and then against those interventions, what kind of outputs we are expecting, and then what outcomes and long-term impact we aspire to achieve. So all these things were thought through in detail. And as we were designing the program or defining the solution, we kept that framework in mind that kept our focus on the ball. So these were some high-level suggestions from my side, from HSC's side, and with the feedback and recommendations from our esteemed panel members and some analysis that we showed you today, I would now like to open the floor for Q&A. My colleague Ahad, perhaps if you could share questions. We have about 25 to 30 minutes. So, perhaps we can take questions by hand, or if you have questions in the chat, you can perhaps start reading out those questions one by one, and we will assign them to one of our panel members. Over to you, Ahad. Gee, so while we wait for Ahad to unmute, I would like, there's a hand
we
raised.
have one question in the chat. As government is nowadays focusing on tourism, is tourism research comes under LCF? Can Upsign provide support in this matter?
So Upsign, I let Dr. Jawad respond to this. Upsign can provide you a platform where you can network with international collaborators, and specific to tourism, perhaps Jawad, if you have any comments, maybe.
Yeah, can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
So, Upsign actually ran an event in London with with an actor and with the and actually we have promoted tourism. I think that there are people who work in tourism in the UK in the university sector. I'm particularly aware of them. I'm not sure how many of them are on our group, because tourism isn't necessarily something the top research intensive universities are doing. But there are certainly the less research intensive ones. So I know, for example, Coventry University is one of the leading universities in the UK in tourism. And what I think I would ask colleagues to do is to probably, the best way really is to, if it's not on our network, you could ask, so there's a couple of ways. You can go on the specific topic groups. Now, we don't have a topic group on tourism, but you could go to the general groups, and there you'll get access to a much wider group of academics. And you could just ask on the two, we've got one called Global and one called UK Network. So they're both the general topic groups. you can post a question that doesn't involve any of the topic groups. So if it doesn't involve healthcare, agriculture, AI, and water energy like the other groups that we set up, then you can just post a general question saying, you know, I'm from such and such university, I want to. So what you really need to do is, and it may be that you could all produce some very short videos out, you know, like a 30-second thing outlining your project, or just write a short summary. The best way is to go there, introduce yourself in a couple of lines, and basically say, I am, you know, I've been shortlisted for a global challenges or other grant, and you know, the deadline is this. Can you connect me? Can anybody connect me to anybody they know who works in this part, this particular topic, who has links with Pakistan? You know, which would be ideal. Ideally, you want them to have links with Pakistan, because if they have no idea about Pakistan, then it, you know, it's a bit of a stretch to say they're a good collaborator potentially. But you know, it's not unheard of. But you know, if you feel it's important that they do have the links, particularly tourism being what it is, it's very sort of local knowledge. And but yeah, that's kind of my advice. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Dr. Jawad. There's a hand raised, Dr. Abdul Said.
Yeah,
if you could please unmute and ask a question.
Hear me? Can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Dr. Sheikh Abdul Said from Bahria University Medical and Dental College in Karachi. I have a question from you. I noticed that at the end of your presentation, you were showing a research intensive universities list, right? So I just, it occurred to me that if you belong to a university which is new and which is not on your research intensive university list, are they not non-starter from the beginning for a good research proposal?
So depends on which university you are and what kind of resources are at your at your disposal to carry out R&D activities. Naturally, some universities have more resources than the others, and those who are at those universities with less resources are at a disadvantage. Which is why we have created a specific instrument for those universities, perhaps who have less resources available to them, in which what we are saying is that these funds are only available for those where PIs will be coming from the less intensive universities. The co-PIs can be from research intensive universities, so there is collaboration and learning. The idea objective is that we want to lift the capacity of the perhaps less resourceful universities who have in the past not benefited from these kinds of grants to lift their capacity for R&D. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just an experiment. The design, which included LCF, was done so with this motivation. The results of this intervention will perhaps be known a few years down the road, whether it actually worked in the fashion that HSE and World Bank were desirous that it would. But again, there are people who have their different thoughts. Those who were defining and designing these interventions had different thoughts. And let's hope that these instruments are able to ultimately deliver the intended outcomes that we had from LCF. I hope I've answered your question.
I asked this question because I'm developing a project for HEC, and it has from within university, from a different department. I'm a physiologist. I've incorporated a biochemist. I'm collaborating with Karachi University for extensive work, in HPLC and all that. And I have collaboration with a pharmaceutical company. I'm working on a development of a drug from medicinal plants, So I was just wondering that this kind of link or collaboration would put me in a better position to, compete for a grant.
Right. So Graham and perhaps Jawad talked about teaming and how critical teaming is. Right. Institutional capacity, your institution's capacity is also very, very important. Ultimately, when you're putting together a team, you need to keep the project deliverables in front of you. And you need to find the best possible teammates, partners, consortium members, and other universities that can help you achieve those deliverables. Now, what were the rationale behind choosing your team or a particular university that you chose that But the earlier part of this session, in which Graham gave you at length the best practices while selecting a team, I would encourage you to perhaps also see our recording for this session. This will be made available on HEC website, and go through the session that Graham gave. I don't know whether you were part of this discussion at that particular point in time, but in that session, he gave you very detailed guidelines on what are the ways why you should be choosing the team, and what the rationale for choosing your PIs and co-PIs and other international collaborators. But on that, if Graham, you need to add something, or Jawad, you need to add something, the floor is yours.
I'll just quickly chip in. Look, when you're doing one of these big GCRF projects, you really need a team, and that team needs to be a research intensive, largely, or certainly the leadership needs to be from research intensive, having facilities available. And what you've described almost sounded sort of like a smaller level of a project. And I think that one of the ways you could work is to find somebody from a research intensive university who has a similar interests or complementary interests, and maybe let them lead it, and you could be providing a large part of that skill. So you have got that option in general, right, to let someone else lead it. But I think it was already said that for the LCF, you've got one mode where it's an LCF and there's a research intensive, a lack of a not so research intensive can lead it. So I think the provision is there. So I think you answered the question.
And I would echo that, those sentiments. I think that, for the GCF, these are very large awards. They're expected to make a big impact. They expect to have a large team involved with them. HEC has decided to make those led by the research-intensive universities. The consortia can most definitely be beyond from any university in Pakistan, and include other team members from beyond that as well. So there's definitely an opportunity to be involved in GCF, but they should be led from research-intensive universities where there's the most capacity to support the project as a whole. And then, as has been noted, and it is in the course proposals, the LCF explicitly has a track for to be led from research-intensive universities, and also a separate track to be led from non-research intensive universities. Thank you.
And I'm not sure whether you're putting a proposal together for GCF or LCF, but the comments are very clear that in GCF, you need to have a research-intensive university because of the scale of the problem and the size of the project. The risk for introducing those institutions with lesser capacity becomes higher. However, if you're working on LCF, then similar methodology and thinking needs to go in choosing the team and the right partners. And we will be talking about team building and consortium building in the coming webinars, and also giving an opportunity to perhaps find additional partners that can strengthen your team by the end of this webinar series on the 20th and 21st. So mark your dates for 20th and 21st. We'll be having extended sessions on both days, where we'll be showcasing you to perhaps some international collaborators for helping you strengthen your teams. The next question from Amjad Aqib, if you can perhaps unmute yourself.
Thank you so much for providing me the opportunity to ask this question. Actually, my question is that, do the HEC have planned to include less research-intensive university in GCF, the same way the research-intensive university has been made part of LCF? I think this way, the less research-intensive university can upbring and they can perform better.
Ji, if you're a less intensive research university and you're working in a less intensive research university, and you have an idea that you believe qualifies for Grand Challenge Fund, you need to identify a lead university which is part of the HEC research intensive university, and you need to form a consortia. You need to be able to create value for your team and your university in that consortia, and have an arrangement with the research intensive university. But the lead party, the principal investigator, has to be from a research intensive university. These are some of the requirements for GCF. So just follow the requirements in letter and spirit, but being in a less research intensive university doesn't mean that you cannot put together a team in which the PI is from a research intensive university, and give yourself a chance to be a part of that project. So, ultimately it boils down to you teaming up with the right PIs, co-PIs, and institutional partners for you to be able to win these grants.
Umar, can I
Ji.
say something here?
Ji.
Hello. Okay. See, I think this is all fine, but one thing that everybody should keep in mind that the evaluators or the viewers need to know your research experience, your research capability. How many projects have you won before? You see, have you done any NRPU? Have you submitted any proposal to any international funding agency? Have you obtained a research grant from IFS or from Pakistan Science Foundation or from any other organization? You see, so you know, I mean, jumping on to JCF and not doing any research of the other organizations is a negative point, you see, you know. So whether you are in a intensive university or a research intensive university, that does not matter as long as you have a credible research experience, you see. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you for your comments. Jawad?
Could I just add, I think you've got to play the game here. The strategy, what is the best strategy for you? It may be that the GCRF is not the best strategy for you. So don't be blinded by the money. Just look at yourself, be honest, look at your collaborators, your research track record, what you've achieved so far, and then pitch yourself for the correct level, whether it's LCF, and, you know, think strategically, right? Who are the you know, do you know people who are very good who you could link with, or could you maybe go for less money or a smaller project because maybe, you know, you don't have that track record? Who can you align with that would complement your skills and maybe lift you up to give you the best chance of succeeding? And that is what it is about, is finding a team that's going to be successful and that's going to be able to deliver. So, you know, don't just look at the big money and think, oh, don't think of it as we are being excluded from the big money. Think of it as I need to cut my cloth according to what I'm offering.
That's right.
Great comments, Dr. Jawad. Thank you. We have the next comment of hand raised from Sher Zaman Khan. If you can please unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I am Sher Zaman Khan from Gomal University, one of the less research intensive university of Pakistan. I will just repeat the question which was asked by Amjad Arte, that why not the list of research intensive universities may please be updated by HEC after every 6 months or after every 1 year, because since last 2 or 3 years, I'm just seeing the same list, which is not yet recently updated. This thing shows that the less research intensive universities will always remain less research intensive, and that the researchers working in these universities will always be dependent upon the progress of research intensive universities. If this is so, then how these less research intensive universities will uplift and can be included in the list of research intensive universities? So that's why I would like to request the concerned authorities of HEC that please give some sort of opportunities to less research institutes so that it can come at par with the other universities of Pakistan. Thank you very much.
Ji, Dr. Kausar, would you want to take this question?
Please.
Perhaps you have more experience than HEC. So
No,
you can respond to this.
I will tell them how to have a lesser intensive university become a high intensive university. You know, I mean, that was a point I raised, but that I do not subscribe to all this. You know, if you are at Gomal, I mean, ask yourself how many NRPU research proposals have you won, or how many of these have been won by your colleagues in the university. That's the way to go, you see. I mean, you cannot all of a sudden become a research intensive university. You have to work hard. I mean, if you obtain all the research funding from other, for example, HEC has a biggest, even bigger than the grand challenge fund. You see, even a bigger portfolio of NRPU. So you should be competing on that level. You see, we all even now apply for an EU proposals, you see, because that is the one which gives you experience, exposes you to all the research methodologies, and that's the way you build up your institutions. Thank you.
I hope we answered your question. Next question is from Eman Munir. If you can please unmute.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for giving me the chance to speak. I have a very little question. I know that this Grand Challenge Fund proposal, it is for 3 years. What if someone only plans it for 2 years? Is it something okay, or it has to be for 3 years? Thank you.
So 3 is the timeline in which you have to complete the project. If you can complete the project earlier, and if that project achieves the other aspects of the evaluation rubrics that have been explained in detail by our senior colleagues and panelists, you need to keep them in mind, because if you don't meet the criteria set in the evaluation rubrics for GCF, you will not be given that grant. But we don't limit any project that can that is showing that it can deliver that impact that qualifies to be given a GCF grant in less than 3 years. So so there is no such criteria. I hope that's clear to you.
Thank you.
We see another hand from Dr. Mohammed. Please, Mohammed Ziaul Haq, if you can please unmute.
Thank you, sir. I just want to ask you, when can we submit the full proposal? I mean, the link is not open yet.
Yes, earlier HSC was perhaps looking to receive the full proposals on 15 September, but now this has been extended because we have introduced these workshops, and we would want you to actually reflect the learnings from these workshops in your proposals. The official date will be communicated to you directly by HSC, but it will be somewhere around 4th of October, first week of October.
Thank you, sir.
Ahad, if there's no other question, there's one more hand. Perhaps we can take 3 more questions. We're left with about 5 minutes. Abbas, if you can unmute.
Hello, sir. Good evening. I'm a PhD candidate from Czech Republic. I have one question. Can I participate as an international collaborator with one team from University of Punjab?
Yes, you can, and you can perhaps be a part of a team. The requirements for a principal investigator and a co-principal investigator are very clear. So if you meet those requirements, and you have a team that you're working with on a proposal on ground in Pakistan, then you can be part of that team. But make sure that the principal investigator and the co-principal investigator requirements are met as you submit the proposal.
Okay. Thank you for proper answer. Thank you.
Nusrat Jahan.
Yes, I have a question about my previous GCF project, which after my presentation, I did not have any deficiency, but you have mentioned in the all indicators. But after presentation, I have asking about collaboration with a national agency who actually they don't want to take part due to lacking expertise in our project, and also due to lacking of the legislation. That how we can resolve these issues.
Ji. So from what I understand from your question, Dr. Nusrat, is that you participated previously and your proposal was not accepted. And what I understand is that you are putting together a consortia and you've reached out to an international collaborator who has refused to be a part of your team because of reasons related to regulation and others. So you're looking to put together a consortia and you're not able to get an international collaborator because of their lack of capacity and because of regulatory issues in Pakistan. Is that correct? That's your question?
Yeah, actually, maybe it's not the regulatory issue, but most importantly, they don't have the expert to evaluate our project, so they can take part in our project.
No, but why are you reaching out to them if they don't have the expertise? I would like my senior colleagues, my panelists, to respond to this question. This is one of those classic.
Because it was asked in my final presentation. It was also the reason when the project, this project was rejected.
No,
This
but
was the
you must
only
have been.
reason. There was no reason of technical issues or no reason of my expertise, because I'm a distinguished professor and I have 40 years of experience in my own field, which we are taking from right from my PhD to up to distinguished professors. So there was no other issue in my email which I received after the presentation.
And this is this year or this is last year you're talking about?
No, this is only the one round has been up to yet.
So this year you've gone through the one round and you've gone through the presentations this year.
So
is it about full backyard project? Is that right?
Yes, yes, Dr. Kausar Abdullah, yes, it was. Now,
Yes.
I have contacted the EPA, I have contacted the Ministry of Climate Change. You said that the environment should be there. The environment people should be there when you are releasing. Although in this round, we were not releasing any mosquito. It was the pilot project to get the information about the Vakia, which bacteria has the potential.
But Dr. Saba, I mean, eventually you will be releasing. I mean, that was the objective of the proposal. You
Yes,
see,
you are right, but this is a very open things that this bacteria already exists.
I mean, obviously, it is a matter of common sense that we do not want to invest that kind of a money if at the end of the day we know that we will not be able to do that. You see, because
but this is
the
not
objective.
only for Pakistan. I mean, this technology has been developed in Australia, in USA, and in China, and everywhere.
Dr.
And they have
Nusrat,
control.
may I interject here, Dr. Nusrat? So I think specific comments on specific proposals, and perhaps if you have agreements to discuss, perhaps there's a separate forum for that.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with you.
Yeah, this is really very strange. This is very strange.
Yeah, but let's use the right and appropriate forum. Dr. Nusrat, you are a distinguished professor, and today's session is, to guide our researchers in working on the proposals.
Advice that how can we then resolve this issue? Because Dr. Jain said that you can address this issue and you can apply it again. Because there was
I would encourage you to write. I would encourage you to write an email. My email is included. We will have a separate discussion on your proposal within the limits of what we can and what we can't. Our experts and agency team will guide you on what perhaps can be done. If you're looking for an international collaborator, perhaps there will be an opportunity for you to present your proposal to some of the international collaborators that we may be showcasing your proposals to or your ideas to on the 20th and 21st. We are here to help, right? And if there's a grievance on your proposal, then there's a different forum for you to discuss it with. There's not much I can do at this stage on that, but I will certainly help connect and push your proposal to the right audience for that purpose.
This is in the best interest of the country, actually. It's not my interest or any other. This is to control your diseases, and this is the proposal.
So Dr. Nusrat, we have now run out of time and we have two hands. So I would like to take the last two questions from Dr. Muhammad Yar Khan. If you can unmute, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Umar Saab. I have a very quick question that is about the limit of submitting number of projects from each university. I am Dr. Muhammad Yar Khan from ComSets, and we have 7 campuses. So either this limit is for each campus or for overall university, because our smallest campus is even much bigger than some universities of Pakistan. So just clarify, please.
No, so the limits are not for campuses, they are for universities, right? So don't look at your campus as a separate university. Your university is one organization, and that organization is being evaluated in this proposal, not your campus. Yeah?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions left?
No, I think we are almost out of time as well. And
okay.
I think we've covered
So I'd like to thank our esteemed panelists today for taking time out for this extended session, for sharing their knowledge and feedback and guidelines for our researcher community as they work on their proposals and fine-tuning their proposals for final submissions for GCF and also for the upcoming call for LCF next month. My emails and contact details I'm going to leave in the chat group here. If any follow-up questions, if any question has been unaddressed, you can write to me or you can call me. I'll give more details. And if you have any grievance on a proposal, if it was not accepted, or if you think some comments that were given in that proposal that were not, perhaps you have some reservations against those comments, then I'll be happy to arrange a session with the team that looks at the grievances, and you can perhaps discuss it at that forum. I wish you all the best of luck, and I encourage all of you to please stay tuned for all our subsequent webinars. Each one of the webinars will be going into detail in one of the key sections of your GCF and LCF proposals. The proposal templates have been developed in line with your evaluation rubrics, which is very critical. As you work on your proposal, making sure that you address all aspects of the rubrics and all sections of the proposal, it's essential. So our webinars have been designed so that we make you go through each one of those sections in detail and make you think about things that perhaps you need to think about while working on your proposal. So ultimately, once you're convinced, you are in a better position to convince the reviewers and HSC for giving you grants for those activities. I'm going to conclude, and I would like my panelists, if they have any concluding comments, to also please share comments. If none, then we can close the session.
It was an excellent session, you see. Thank you, Omar. Thank you.
Thank you, Qasir Abdullah Sahab. Thank you, Dr. Jawad. Thank you, Professor Ihtisham, and
thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ram, for your wonderful presentation today. Thank you, everyone.